Timo invited me for explaining you what's going on and what we call the extreme wildfire event situation around the world. And as an operational, I will try to explain how we feel about it, how we understand about it, and I must say that for the first time since I started my career, which is 31 years ago, it's the first time when operationals or firefighters we are dealing with fires that science still cannot explain, and that's a big trouble. Models we are using are totally out of touch with reality. So I am sending my boys every day to fight fires, hoping fires will behave as a normal thing, not as the new extreme we can see. And so we are struggling to understand what's going on and how climate change is creating such a big firestorms worldwide. And the problem is that nobody is connecting all the information, because I have had one of those events in Catalonia. I've seen another one in Portugal. I've been in Canada in Fort McMurray 2016. I went to Chile in January 2017. I flew into California November 18. I was in Sweden July 18. I was in Greece July 18. And I went to South Africa October 18. Then go back to Australia, and then finally I end up this summer in Paraguay, Bolivia, and Brazil with the Amazonia wildfires. So going worldwide is the only way you can just pick up as much information available as possible, because not a single fire service is having all that experience at its own area. And there is no global body to pick up that information, but the fires are behaving and showing global trends. So never like now in the world we've seen fires that big and that intense, although number of fires is reducing, but the intensity is increasing and the rate of spread is increasing. But never before we have had as much resources to fight the fires and as much technology monitoring the fire. So there is something missing, and that's the history I try to explain. That's a picture of a fire in Portugal. That's the biggest event never recorded on Earth. It is Portugal, it's the European Union. And almost 142 people die in that event. But it's the biggest one, because it burned in 7 hours. In 7 hours, 273,000 hectares in 7 hours. Just make the numbers. It is not a fire of 1 million hectares like in Alaska or like in Bolivia in 3 weeks. It's 273,000 in 7 hours. Part of that fire, some flanks of that fire were spreading at 14,000 hectares per hour. So it's an unbelievable rate of spread. But of course, there is nothing we can do in front of those fires as a firefighters. So that's some of the show I did in 2017, December 2017, after coming back from California. I already was in the Las Máquinas fires in Chile, and of course in the Portugal fire in Loja. Those are part of the rate of spreads we saw day by day, and look at the numbers, hectares per day of those portions of the fire. The event in Portugal, it was 3 different fires, but one single fire, 120,000 hectares. And in Chile, in one night, that fire went over 100,000 hectares. So Chile, like a lot of the places in the world, has gone from fires that they used to burn 1,000 hectares, they jump into 10,000 hectares. That was a huge fire, or extreme wildfire event. But suddenly, now they jump over the 100,000 hectares. And we don't understand, and you can add that to the models we have and the science we have, you will not get that behavior showing your screen. So that's where we are, and that's what we are facing. And that's a good example of what we are looking to. There is okay. This is a graph about energy, and everything comes down to energy. And everything comes down, maybe that's because I am here, to have the sensors to monitor the energy those fires are releasing. Because as much energy the fires can release into the atmosphere, they can create new type of behavior, because they can change the atmosphere at a continental scale, and then change not the climate but just the meteorology for weeks to come and for months to come. So look at this fire. That's Australia, 2009. Was one of those fires that we thought was a unique extreme fire. But now we understand that that moment, 2009, was like a small window opening to the future of 10 years in the future to come. And that's really what is already happening. So 10,000 kilowatts per meter, 10,000 kilowatts per meter of front of fire per minute. That's the data. It's the limit. It's the limit of the physical capacity of fighting fire. More than that means that any firefighter close to that front of flames will sustain enough radiation to start to have burn, second-degree burns in his skin underneath the firefighting clothes. So that's the physical limit. More than that, we cannot fight it. Doesn't matter the number of planes, drones, satellites, whatever you want to put there. The firefighters could not get nearby the flames. And 4,000, which is that line, is the limit for a single unit. So those are our limits. And as you can see, the energy released by that fire that February in Australia was incredible. It was close to 9 times the limit. And that limit depends on the fuel load available. And that fuel load available is the only thing we can manage. And that's why we are telling all our politics in Brussels that we don't want more resources to fight fire. We want to have our firefighters well equipped and our number of firefighters at the level they are prepared and ready, but we need to change the landscape. We cannot change the capacity of fighting fires just adding more resources. It's a waste of money, and this waste of money is getting to really high limits. So climate change is related to fire? Yeah, I will explain the history. But this extreme event in Australia, 2009, which killed 173 people, civilians, it could have been avoided with the landscape having less than 10 tons per acre per hectare of fuel load. Doesn't matter how extreme the weather is. If there is not enough fuel, there is not enough intense fire. So that was the logic behind the fuel management, and that is the logic that has been driving research and simulation and analysis of landscape to provide protection against wildfires. And that's what I've been reading in the papers you have outside, just looking at the fuel loads, using LiDAR for that, just identifying gaps, just building strategies around. That's a classical approach to the extreme wildfire events. But things are changing fast, and things are coming to create a different thing. And that's Portugal. Portugal 2017. As you can see, out of the different fires, none of them went over the 10,000 threshold. So they were fires, extreme wildfire. They were at the limit, but it's still something we could manage. But there is one that showed a downdraft in the evening, and that one in the evening showing a downdraft went well above that. It was not predicted. It was not supported by any model, and it was not seen by any sensor going to happen. What really went there is that fire just burning in 1 hour, where it should be burning in 13 hours. He went suddenly at 9 in the evening. It changes 1.5 kilometers per hour rate of spread to 18 kilometers per hour rate of spread. And it did that for half an hour, left 64 people dead in the road at 15 kilometers away road, and then stopped. That fire, if we compare that fire to another nearby fire, those are the lines of the evolutions of the growing of that fire. As you can see, after the 12th hour since the beginning, both fires were behaving following the same trend. That means those fires were behaving under the effect of the atmosphere. They were driven by weather, the atmosphere weather. But at the beginning, the green fire, which is Petrograu, was doing extremely fire behavior, totally out of sense, according to the weather that was on site. So initially, the fires were doing what they want, just they were driving the atmosphere, and after 12 hours, the atmosphere was driving them. How on earth a fire can change that such a big atmosphere? And that's the question: is how on earth a fire can become a storm? Look at the data. The data, its temperature, its humidity, and its wind. Wind is not sensible. There's a slight change on the wind direction, but it's nothing important. It's winds 20 and below. But look at temperature. At noon, it was almost 42, 44 degrees extreme. But at 9, it was under 30. And humidity, really low, almost 15, 16, 18. But at 9, it was above 35, almost 40. So fire should be improving, and was not. Fire was getting worse. And this trend is the same in Las Chile, which makes the run at night. In California, Santa Rosa, which makes the run at night. It's the same in Bolivia, has been making the runs at night. So there is something there that is not working. And we were able to explain it, not to predict it, if we look at the sounding of the atmosphere. So the cloud of the fire can get stability at certain height. But if the fire has enough energy, then it goes to free convection. If it goes to free convection, he can just put the plume at the top of the troposphere from 3,000 meters elevation to 14,000 meters elevation. And the indraft, this change on chimney is creating, is multiplying the wind speed on the surface. That means every time we double the height of the column, we increase the wind speed by 8. But the most important thing is that once the plume is up there, the hot air coming from the surface is pushing the cold air up there down the surface. So the fire is not being driven anymore for the surface weather. It's been driven by the weather of the air coming down from the higher elevation, which is colder, which is with a lot more density. And then everything changes because it's a total change on conditions. And this is making another change in classical knowledge about wildfire. This is just a graph. I will go really fast. But it's trying to compare the pre-treatment forest stands with the post-treatment forest stand. This was classical silvicultural treatment to prevent forest fires. It means if you treat the fuels or you reduce the fuel load in your landscape, then the intensity of the front is reducing. It's not the speed, it's the intensity. The one you change with less intensity, firefighters has a lot more capacity. That was in the weather average we used to have in the 80s and the 90s. But if you take the weather average from the 16th to the 19th, that's what you get. So the difference between the pre-treated areas and the post-treated areas is really reduced. And the speed is increasing. It means under the new climate conditions, our fires are spreading faster, but they are releasing a lot more energy. But the problem is that the treatment doesn't make that difference. So what's going on? The understanding of what's going on is difficult, but mainly what happens is that the average higher temperature, it's creating a stress into a forest that it's used to be living in an area with a different climate. So that's just creating weakness in our forest, and that forest has a lot more surface to burn because the initial answer of any forest to stress is to reduce the green crown of our trees, and that's creating a lot more availability of fuel, and it's creating a thinner bulk density, so it allows for a lot more circulation, and that allows the fire to change really fast. But in theory, that changed the game. That means classical silvicultural approaches will not work anymore under those type of fire. I want to say that those type of fire are really strange. We've seen 72 around the world in the last 5 years. So it's less than 0.5% of the fires we have. But we should understand them because they are the ones driving the emergencies worldwide and the one that poses a lot more danger for civilians. Look at this picture. What's strange about this picture? That's Portugal. You should think about extreme wildfire, crowning fire. It's extreme fire spotting a long distance and burning like crazy. But what do you see there? All the crowns are still there. They didn't burn. It's not a crown fire. It's a surface fire. And that's not normal. That's not normal at all. So that's what we think happened there. It's a really bad video, but it shows the important things in Chile. It's a mobile phone video. Look at the flames and the spotting. It's really flat into the terrain. So the flames are getting tall there, but look at the spotting. It's there. It's going really, really flat and really fast, like crazy. Look at this one, how flat and attached to the ground it is going. You can see smoke there almost. Only in the wheel in the middle, you see the flames getting up. So that type of fire behavior, it's showing something quite unique. It means it is something pressing the fire to the ground. It's like this fire was not in the open forest. It was burning in a roof, under a roof, inside a room. So there is a cape over it, and that's just closing the energy at a low level. So the fire is using all the energy in a really short atmosphere. So it's pretty efficient, and that's allowing him to spread really fast. And so we use a lot of technology to look at the plumes. We use LiDAR and radar, just focusing the plumes, trying to understand how the plumes was working and what was the speed of the wind in the indraft, and how if that speed was showing any downdraft at all. And that's, you see there the speed of the wind, and a really high speed in the middle in the going updraft, but then the downdraft, the blue means down and the red means up. It's really happening. So it shows that we were guessing that fire is not breathing from the weather he's living in. Fire is breathing from the weather that he finds at the area where he stabilizes the plume. So understanding dynamics of plume dynamics, it's basic for now understanding fire behavior. It means we've been looking at fires, looking at fuel, topography, and weather. And now we should understand fire dynamics. It means fires can change totally the weather because he's interacting with the atmosphere and changing the atmosphere over the fire. And he can bring down a lot of the dry air, and he can just create vorticity, and he can just has a lot of entrainment with that atmosphere over him. So this is one of the moments we get with the LiDAR of the plume when the fire is really getting up. Then it's breaking the stability line, and then it's building a pinacumulus with the flat top there. That's building a storm. And as you can see, it is a lot of downdraft at the side of that plume. So understanding all those processes, and look at the speed of the wind, the fire, 58 meters per second, which is hurricane force created inside. It's a low pressure system creating, and there you can see how the fire is just creating all the wheels and the small low pressure system above that. So the main question when we said that in 2017, scientific evidence said that you are not true. You are dreaming in your fire. But well, we just provide enough data to show that was true. This is wind data from Portugal event in 15th of October 2017. Any anemometer available in a circle 500 kilometers around the fire is there. And that day we were expecting Ophelia storm. It's like Lorenzo this week. It's a tropical hurricane going to Europe instead of going to the Caribbean. That hurricane hits Portugal by noon and that day, and we were expecting that to create wind-driven fire, not storms of fire. And by 7, the storm will have gone away and was hitting already Ireland. But look at that wind speed. We expected 60, 70 sustained kilometers an hour wind, and that was there. But then suddenly, in the middle of the night, the fires created storm, the storm collapsed, and that collapse created even higher winds. And those winds were felt in all the anemometers inside the circle of 1,000 kilometers around the fire. So really that fire was affecting the whole atmosphere. The tallest it was 14 kilometers, and the wider was 1,000 kilometers at least. So we have finally fires that can create a change on the meteorology because they can create low pressure systems at a continental scale because they have enough energy to do that. It's not that the fire is increasing the energy only because of lack of forest management or a change in the landscape or a change in our societies. It is because the increase of the temperature, the average temperature in our atmosphere is creating a lot more latent energy in that atmosphere. So fire is joining a hotter atmosphere and they can develop higher and higher storms and effects in those in that synergy. And this here it comes the tricky point, the dangerous point, the one why Brussels is financing this research. This is the same data I show you about the wind. This is the moment of the storm, and this is the moment of the peak of the wind. This is general data inside that circle of 1,000 kilometers. This is the single data of one station, which is the station that was close to the head of the fire at the moment the fire did the collapse. The red line is wind, the blue line is humidity. Look at the moment the wind almost stops, is at the moment the humidity is starting to rise. So when the humidity is coming in, fire should stop. But it's not true. When the humidity comes in and you get a firestorm form, the humidity is pumped to 14,000 meters and then there freezes and starts precipitation. And that makes the plume collapse. And once the plume collapses on the ground, it expands fire everywhere. And that's the last part of the firestorm process when the humidity gets in. And that's part of the reason why we haven't seen those firestorms in the Mediterranean, but we only have seen those firestorms in the cold and nearby the ocean ecosystems, because it's where they can get that humidity to create the final pyrocumulonimbus and collapse. And remember that the humidity, it lives a lot better than the dry air. The dry air is dense and it goes down. So now we are starting to understand a lot of things. And one thing is that Portugal is the area in Mediterranean that burns more surface per year. It's not a big country, but burns a lot more surface than anybody else. But it's the wettest Mediterranean country. And that's why we saw already those events. Just think about it. In Portugal, in South Africa, in Chile, in California, always the west side, because the circulation from the ocean comes from the west. So all the Atlantic wall of Europe is really going to have that, because climate change is creating two things. One thing is creating milder winters, and the other thing is drier summer. So milder winter, it means it grows very well, biomass, and dry summer, it means it can burn. So that's why Central Europe and Northern Europe is going to see a lot more of those events. And in 2014, there is one single fire in Sweden that was 1,000 hectares in the evening, and the next morning was 18,000 hectares. At that moment, nobody explains anything because we didn't understand anything. But now looking that back, we understand what was going on that day. So finally, we got normal fires and we got fires and their fire dynamics. It means normal fires, the expected reduction of energy when the humidity is increasing is what we can see. And those new fires, what we see is a peak of energy when the humidity comes in. So those are fires that show fire dynamics. So fire itself is creating conditions for different wildfires. And those are the normal fires that we used to predict. And all our models are based on that knowledge. So everything we do in forecast, in prevention, and modeling is based on this type of fire, but not in this type of fire. That's what we say, this type of fire is new, and we still cannot model it. We cannot simulate it, and it's creating new things. So now we're struggling to see those fires using satellites. So that's convectivity from a satellite, from the Copernicus. So all the yellow means vertical vorticity, and this is the normal vorticity from the orography. And this is the vorticity the fire created during 15 minutes. At the moment in Greece, he killed 93 people. During those 15 minutes, not more than that, the fire built up that pyrocumulonimbus and disappeared. But that was the moment that the fire just tripled the size and increased it by 10 the intensity. So we need to detect that. But if we are only detecting, we are doing nothing. We need to predict that. And we need to understand a lot more all the processes. So that's what we are applying artificial intelligence in all the data. And now using GWIS, we already have 8,000 fires to get into the learning process. But it's not going. That video is not going. That's another example in Spain of those fires. You can see the pyrocumulus, and this was this stable layer. We should see the plume getting stable, and that's the extra energy that is driving the fire to change everything around it. And that's the process in Bolivia. That's what we can have from the models, and then that's what we can see from the satellites with all the infrared cameras and all the data we have there. So at the moment, all we are doing is just we are teaching our systems of artificial intelligence to understand of what is predicted, adjust what is predicted with what we see, and then get from the ground the reality, and then starting to build models. Still, we don't know exactly how it works, but we at least are hoping to get some answers, because believe me, under that thick smoke, nobody can see anything. So we need to add source of data there and compare the modeling of the soundings, and with elevation, the fire, the plume will get stable, and if it will have enough humidity, and it will have enough energy to jump over the top. And that's how we look at that, using infrared thermal cameras to calculate the temperature of the cloud, because the temperature will tell us how tall it is and how much humidity it has compared to the storm nearby and to the fire itself over there. That fire over there, it's exactly this evolution of the cloud. So we need to differentiate very well this storm thing with that fire thing, and compare that to the forecast through the models, and then pass that information ahead on time to the firefighters on the ground. And if we really understand it, then we can apply that into planning, and means reduce the energy in our landscape to make sure extreme events will not be able to get fires that build up that amount of energy that they can just open the free convection and create the really big storm. So the drying conditions are, as that's Catalonia is where I work, drying conditions are increasing. That's creating a lot more fuel available. That's more energy, but it's the hotter and hotter and hotter atmosphere every year, which is increasing the energy of that atmosphere. So we have to take all that in account. It's not only the increasing temperatures, it's also the increasing temperature and the increasing fuel and how good we are. It means this is the reduction of surface burn the last 3 decades in Catalonia. We've been really good, at least, to reduce surface burn. But look at that. The number of days of fire has been increasing since 2003. So before 2003, the blue shows the number of days of extreme weather. After 2003, this is the number of days. So every year, we are increasing 1.5 days of extreme weather. So it means since 2003, our seasons are lasting 1.5 months more of extreme weather, but also normal season is even longer. So we are starting to see fires just changing at night to the big plumes, and we are starting to see fires just running crazy. Meanwhile, our burnout is not doing anything. So this is a burnout we are putting in place to stop that fire, but it's not carrying, it's not burning, because humidity is 80%, but this fire is breathing air at humidity 2% from 4,000 meters elevation. So we must understand that. We must to start to take that into account. We need to get better models, better observation, use drones or use LiDAR or sonics winds just to calculate those wind fields above us, because that's the change with a west wind and with the increase of 10% humidity. Look at the change of fire behavior over there. And look at every time our height of the plume doubles, the wind increases by 8. This height corresponds to that place and had been multiplied by 4, and now it's creating the storm cloud already. And this is a storm cloud of 2012. You can see the fires there. And this is the other thing, the low pressure system. This is a wind-driven fire. And as you can see, the wind is pushing flat, but here something is going on, and it's that vertical low pressure system. And that low pressure system is really similar to that of Portugal. So we're using that to simulate and plan ahead. This is around Barcelona city. This is the fire we expect in the normal conditions, but it is the fire we expect under the extreme conditions. It means a shift to the left. It means that if we try to flank that fire to protect Euro interface in that area, we will, when the change will came, we will lose everything. So we are starting to tell our government there is a lot of things we will not be able to defend, and the only defensive way of safety can come from management. So we are asking them just to think about safety as a product of bioeconomy, because if not, there is not much we can do. That's an example of Barcelona. This fire how grows and gets impact into the city, and that's the understanding of the logic of the fire and the management we should apply. So we are living in a comfort zone. The things we know, we know. We've been doing a lot of efforts to understand the thing we don't know, which is models and research, but a lot of times we are working by experience because science is still not there. There's things we don't know, we know. But at the moment, for the first time in the last 30 years, we are heading into an area that we don't have experience, we don't know, and we don't have models, we don't know. So those areas are the ones we don't know, we don't know. So that's a black swan, and that's an accident for sure in the future. So Europe is deep into that. And that's the type of fire we expect, 1 million hectare fires on the Pyrenees or in the Black Forest. So we need to get a lot more knowledge. We need to get new tools in the ground to understand all those things, because the classical knowledge about forest fire prevention and forest fire firefighting is not working anymore. We really need to do a push ahead. Thank you.
Now there is time for questions. I have a small one. What should we do?
What we're doing, just explaining reality, not hiding reality, and understand that our forest, because climate change is going to change. So the forest that we see in the area where we live, if the climate change, the forest needs to change. And we must help in that change instead of trying to stop it. Because if we stop it, we are artificially keeping a forest that is dying, and it's creating those big events. So all the big fires we've seen are worldwide. They happen at the ecotone area, at the change of different ecosystems. From the Mediterranean to the brushland, from the boreal to the taiga, from the broadleaf to the pine needle. In those areas is where we see the big fires, the ecotones of change. So what we have to do, first of all, is understand, right? And try not to fight something with an old knowledge. Not because the solutions in technology we have now, we need to pay back the investment done to produce those tools. Not because we need to pay back, we have to keep using those tools if they don't work anymore. So we need to be aware of that. And the main problem we can see is that every single country that haven't seen these type of fires, they say that will not happen to us. And that's coming. So if you use the LiDAR to calculate the full load, and you use the LiDAR to see the atmosphere, the data confirms that this thing is coming. And I don't want to be the black angel, but northern France, southern Germany, the Ardennes, the Black Forest, and the border German Poland, and part of the south of Norway and Sweden. Those are the areas that likely next 10 years we'll see those type of changes. So what I have to do, I don't know. But we have to understand what's going on.
So it looks like that raking the forest is not anymore enough. So
no.
But you said that you need more data and more precise data for being able to understand the behavior. So I think here are some people who know something about sensors and how to collect data. So what kind of hopes or needs you have for technology?
So we use the Copernicus technology, which is satellites or geostationary satellites worldwide. But we need a lot more definition, and we need to carry on that technology to understand what's going on the ground. And we need to make the link between what we've seen and what already have happened, because those fires, we thought they were new, but when we look at the database, we've seen they were happening already 20 years ago at a smaller scale. So now we are applying algorithms to learn, because we since we don't understand, we use the black box concepts, means when that can happen and which ones are the signals or the triggering points. But the other thing is, we have in Europe last summer, we have had almost 600 aerial platforms flying the fires, and none of them carry on any sensor as a LiDAR, just infrared things, but not LiDARs or other sensors. So we can freely afford platforms to pick up data, because we need to get data to understand that ahead, not try to respond to the problem when it happens, just to see it coming.
Yes, I'm Juha Tuomola from Finnish Meteorological Institute. So this is perhaps not a question. This is like a comment. If I understand right, so you have some kind of analogy between these extreme fires and cumulonimbus clouds. So you have the steering flow is not on the surface, but it's somewhere. So somewhere on the upper atmosphere. So you have perhaps this overshooting tops that you can see on the satellite pictures, and then you have these strong updrafts and downdrafts and something like that. So this was very interesting to see, like this analogy with a normal convection, and so that your normal physics is not working anymore like these common fires. So. Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on, and we are just working really close with meteorologists, because we need to understand which level of energy release will trigger those things to happen. At the moment, nothing is explaining that, and of course satellites are providing this, but we need more detail on that. So closer sensors or closer data, because the problem is we need to build the model, because it's not good anymore to say, what? Look at that picture, the one I saw. It's doing a PyroCV now. Well, that's too late. Somebody down there is suffering a lot. So we need to understand that. There was questions there.
I would still think that because you need huge amount of energy and fuel to create that kind of phenomena, so it will, in the end, it will come to fuel management and preparatory actions. What's your thought?
I knew that question was coming. Let's see if that works. Tell me how much fuel available is there. It's nothing. It's totally cow land. And look at that. It's not a wind what is blowing. It's a downdraft of one of those storms. And it's a crazy thing. It burned almost 170,000 hectares. That's Bolivia. 3 weeks ago. We were able to predict that, not because the energy of the fuel, because the unconditional stability of the atmosphere and the big black area burned 2 weeks before was creating a little bit of change. So it's a lot of things going into the game. And we are firefighters. We don't understand it. We need you guys. We know how to explain it, but that's it. So in one of the videos that I used to have.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah. Go.
So, as you know, in Finland we have a lot of forest, but we also have a lot of lakes. What do you think as a firefighter? Is that good for us or bad for us?
It's really good for you. You can jump in the lake and save yourself, and the helicopters can get water. It's not about the water surface you have. You have a lot of forest. Yeah, but your forest doesn't have a lot of energy unless it starts to dry out, and the energy will come from the organic layer on the ground. If that becomes available, then that will be the extra amount of energy there. I don't know. I've seen that in Norway happening, and I've seen that in Canada happening. But Finland, you still are doing pretty well. But I don't know about meteorology, what it will be. And just to show you a little bit of how we feel because of that thing happening. This is my people in a safe area. And you will see that's when they know they are trapped. And that is not an extreme day, but you can see it's still the extreme fire behavior. But we are really, really, really just stepping back from our fire behavior planning. More questions? Meanwhile, you see how many people get trapped.
It must be very frightening to put your men putting down fire like that.
Well, we thought that was our duty to put the flames out, but now we understand that our duty is just to make sure tomorrow we still have forests. So now we're starting to apply a lot of the fire ecology concept. So if the forest can regenerate, we don't risk anything at all. And we understand that the mosaic of the fires like this are creating a new forest to come back and creating a mosaic that will change the fire behavior. So one of the things we've been learning the last years is that if the stands, they have diversity of age and size and height, fire, they need a continuity of energy going into that plume. If the energy comes at a different paces, if there is a mosaic of different types of forests, so the fire cannot catch energy as fast as needed. So it slows down. So that's part of the change in the management, is just to look at the big zoom. But anyway, you see how it goes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's time to move for the next presentation, but let's give a hand for Mark.